Hi guys, welcome back to another reaction video and thoughts here on Our Eyes Your Eyes. I'm ready to watch episode 5 of season 2 of Vinland Saga. But before starting this video, as always, I just wanted to remind you to subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell, leave a like to support me, and feel free to join me in this wow, amazing adventure. Okay, in the previous episode we saw the awakening, let's call it like this, of Thorfinn, and now let's see what's going to happen. Let's see Knuto, because at the end of the episode I really believe that I saw Knuto. So let's see what's going to happen. Are you ready to join me with this? Check it out. These are the Danes, of course. Knuto. That's him. 足の跡。Ah! Okay, okay. Oh, finally we see his perspective of the things, because at that time we couldn't. This was one of the most iconic scenes. Yeah. Lucius Artorius Castus. That is Lucius, not Lucius. Wow. He still can't forget that, of course. But it's impossible to forget, let's say. But he became a king. Oh. But he didn't touch Wales. Oh. Ah, okay, okay, okay. We needed to understand after, yes. Wow. Never ending. Okay, I said it a few seconds before. Eh. I mean, the destiny of Knuto is something crazy because he has never wanted to fight. Oh, so handsome anyway. And then Ragnar. But that's Ragnar's brother, right? Wow. But I expected this from Knuto. I thought that he would have never agreed with these. Wow. But, I mean... he has no mercy, let's say. Oh, Flocky. Oh my. What does he want now? Ah, okay. And what's the reason? Torkel. But I thought they were together. Ah. Why is he angry? Ah, I mean, he works for him now, as it was planned. Wow. Vabbè, Torkel is out of his mind as always. I know because you're under Knut, so. Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, that scene. There's still the hope somehow. Eh, but that's not the path that he really wanted from the beginning, let's be honest. I mean, at the end he chose to do that, but nah. Yeah, that's the good thing of Torkel. But I wonder what the Knuto really thinks. Because he doesn't say things out loud, so... It's hard to be a king, huh? Wow, that facial expression was something strange. But later I'm going to tell you one thing. No, come on, I don't I don't believe this. But he will not. He wants more. Well, this is something that I didn't expect about Knuto's personality anyway. Ah, okay. Wait, I needed to wait a little bit. Yeah, because they were saying that they are too. I mean, Oh. He's trying to convince him with the words. Oh. That means the poison, the wine. Wow. But he took inspiration from Ashelado, by behaving like this. Uh-oh. Everything seems so uneasy right now that it's confusing me quite a little bit. What does he want to do? I mean, what does he want to show him? Oh, oh. They are going to send a signal, but to whom? Huh? What's wrong? Okay, someone is coming, but who's that? I know other signals. Oh my, there are some reinforcements. Oh my. No way. Because he has all the troops around, so he has no other choice actually. He's so fearful. Look at how Knuto changed in so many years like this. I mean, so he obtained what he wanted. He was poisoned. Eh, let's call it illness. Oh no, the crown. Ah, no. Ah, ah. But again, he poisoned him. Look what you have become, Knuto, somehow, let's say. Yeah, Knuto is smarter than his father for sure. Oh, Torkel doesn't appreciate what he did. Whoa. This scenario is completely different. Oh no! And now, yeah, but Knuto, are you really satisfied with this life? His eyes changed completely. Okay, this episode surprised me quite a lot. I mean, I imagined that from the previous episode's ending that we were supposed to be focusing on Knuto in this episode. Yeah, recently I rewatched season 1 to get a full panorama, I mean a full vision of the story, also because I didn't want to forget about certain details. And I have to say that I am shocked about the way in which Knuto changed through the years. I liked that at the beginning of this episode, at a certain moment, you could see Knuto's face. And he was surrounded by crows on a sunset scene. You know already from Shingeki no Kyojin that I analyzed in a very detailed way all these type of scenes, and I have to say that Mappa Studio is recreating some of these scenes even in Vinland Saga. I don't know if this is Mappa's style or not. I mean, you have to tell me if in the manga Makoto Yukimura is using this symbolism or not, or it's just Mappa's creation, I mean Mappa's idea. Black Crows is connected to death, and that means something really negative. Actually, if we check Knuto's life, we can't say that his life was surrounded by good people, or except for Ragnar, we can't say that Knuto was handled by people who could encourage him, who could give him moral values. Let's say that Knuto was not used to see peaceful environments since he was young. I remember when Ragnar was explaining that Knuto had this unfortunate destiny to see violence in front of his eyes since he was really young. This contributed to let him become really shy, really skeptic, introvert. He didn't really want to communicate with others except for Ragnar's help. So we know that Knuto had this sort of a personality based on what he had experienced. But from the end of season 1 till now, till what we saw in this episode, we saw that, yeah, he chose the path of blood. Not only because of the fact that his father died and he had to gain the role that his father left behind, but also because he was always surrounded by Vikings and he was always surrounded by a war context. So we have to contextualize the character based on his setting. I did this even with Einar, I did it with Thorfinn, so I wanted to do this even with Knuto, because as I was telling you in previous episodes, it's really easy to judge the book from the cover. As soon as you open the book and you start to learn about what's going on, the pages can tell you something that the cover can't. And I think that even in Knuto's case, we can't judge his behavior, what he's showing us, without thinking what he really thinks or how he's really feeling. At the end of the previous episode, we saw that he was surrounded by all these crosses. And yeah, recently I was rewatching episode 14, that in my opinion is one of the cruelest episodes of Vinland Saga. You remember when Askeladd is slaughtering that entire village while it's winter and they have to try a way to to cross all whales in order to reach a specific town. Yeah, I remember in that moment that even in that case, Knuto is in front of a cross and he understands the brutality, the cruelness of everything that is done by Vikings. There's no pity, there's no mercy. The fact that I saw him at the end of the previous episode in front of crosses, or walking through crosses, makes me understand that even if he seems pretty brutal, he's still thinking about certain things privately. Without others looking at him. When he is by himself, he has time to think more about what's going on. And I think that everything that is happening, it's just a heavy burden that he's carrying. I don't want to say that everything that he's doing is against his will, because actually we don't have to forget that if someone really doesn't want to do something, he doesn't do that, right? We shouldn't, of course, excuse Knuto of what he's doing just because, his father died, so he had to do what he had to do because he was the only heir and whatever. But we have to contextualize even the historical period, because at that time, I think that you couldn't refuse. You couldn't say, look, I don't want to be the new king or whatever. If you were the heir, you had to become one, against your will too. So I'm trying to depict a description of Knuto that it's not always the usual one. That is, in this episode he was really mean, he was really cruel and whatever. Yes, he was. And we saw it in multiple moments, in multiple scenes. But I also wanted to remind myself of the fact that Knuto was even inspired by what he saw throughout his adolescence. Now he's a young man, but when he was younger, years before, he was participating in his father's death. And he was checking with his own eyes what Askeladd was doing to him, without moving a finger, because at that time he could have protected his father, but he didn't, because he accepted Askeladd's plan, even if Askeladd didn't completely tell him what his plan was. And even in the map we saw in this episode, we can clearly understand that he didn't touch whales. That was one of the promises he made at that time when Askeladd was asking him this, especially because Grazianus, you remember, he asked the new king, or I mean the heir of the king, to promise him that whales would have never been touched. And he kept that promise. I mean, from the map I could see that he has never wanted that land. And it's a sort of a respect to the promises that he made that makes you understand even the other side of Knuto's personality, that he's a quite honest person, but he's also keeping his promises. He's really loyal, so we can't argue about these. I mean, we can't discuss the contrary about these kind of things. But on the contrary, I can see that he was definitely inspired by Askeladd's technique to pursue the others. And in fact, even throughout the season 1, you see that Knuto is observing a lot. And he also says that he is saying, look, I'm not acting, I'm just observing. I am trying to understand how things work. So let me tell you, I think Knuto is definitely smarter than his dad, just because of this, principally speaking. I mean, he's observing a lot, so by having this intuition and how to rule certain moments, he can definitely make it. Do you remember even when he was against Bjorn, his authority in front of him could stop Bjorn from attacking him just because of the glimpse of an eye. So, as you can see, Knuto has power, but this power doesn't relate necessarily to violence. I mean, he's not a violent man, but right now, by being the king of Danes, he needs to use violence or to provoke others by using violence, because that's what he has seen so far. That's the same thing that I told you regarding Thorfinn. I mean, Thorfinn and Knuto had in front of their eyes a certain inspiration, a certain way of behaving that was inspiring them throughout their years of their teenagerhood. So it's quite normal, it's quite obvious that if you see certain scenes over and over again, you are going to be inspired and you are going to follow what you have seen. That's what's happening even in reality. I mean, we are grown up by our parents, and our parents are giving us a certain education, and probably if we were born in another context with other parents, we would have behaved differently. So we do what we were always taught. That's how we are. I mean, later we can also change the way we were, but let's say that from the beginning we are inspired by what we saw. And Knuto saw examples like Floki, examples like Thorkel, like Askeladd, like other Vikings working for him. So violence was becoming his new environment. He started being taught by Ragnar to be a nice Christian man. But then suddenly all these things turned upside down, especially because after that episode 14, maybe Knuto is judging even the figure of God. I think that I told you in season 1 lots of things about it, but when you realize that God is not stopping violence happening here on the planet, sometimes you ask yourself, why am I worshipping God? I mean, God should be merciful, right? He should not accept all these violence, and he should punish the evil ones. I mean, the evil men who are committing these kind of crimes. But God is not intervening. What I did so far, that means believing in God, was it the right thing? Because I couldn't see any sort of development from that point of view. If I also become violent, will God punish me for this? Or am I becoming the usual figure of the king that wants to be even more powerful than God is? At that time, kings were playing the role of the Almighty. I mean, the kings were seen as someone you can't betray, otherwise you would have received a punishment, someone who you have to obey because otherwise you would have been punished. So as you can see, the figure of the king was almost on the same level as God. And that's why I'm saying that Knuto realized that as soon as Ascelado cut the head of his father, he saw in Ascelado someone that he would have never expected, but at the same time he was observing his methods, I mean the technique that he had to pursue others, to provoke others, and to obtain what he wanted. And Ascelado did it actually. He was cutting King Sweyn's head, and that's why in this episode he is asking to have the head of this new king of England. I mean, he is always using the same strategy. He is pursuing these men who's standing on the other king's side, because now we have two kings. One is Knut and the other one is the other man who was ruling on the man we saw in this episode. You can see how strict he was. I mean, you see how Knut goes straight to the point and he doesn't give any other sort of choices to these men. He has to accept anyway, and he wants to obtain what he wants. So I could see that he was influenced by Achelad's behavior at that time, and he took inspiration even from Torkel, even if Torkel right now seems to not agree what Knuto is doing. He doesn't appreciate what he became, sincerely. I have this feeling. Later, we are going to see Thorfinn and Knuto face to face once again. And you see that Knuto is even followed by Floki. I think one day Thorfinn will discover that Floki ordered Acelado to kill Thors. That's what I expected to see, because if Thorfinn will understand this, automatically he will understand that if we have to say that there's an enemy, for Thorfinn, the real enemy should be Floki more than Acelado. But now Floki is standing next to Knuto, so I think that when Thorfinn and Knuto will meet again, because I think that this will happen for sure, that will be a huge problem, because Knuto, by standing next to Floki, and Thorfinn, by maybe discovering what he asked Acelado to do to his dad, there will be a sort of conflict. I mean, there will be a battle, probably, but I really hope that Thorfinn understands that as for himself, as for Thorfinn himself, he doesn't have to repeat the same mistake. He doesn't have to take the path of revenge once again. So I don't know, I'm still confused about what's going to happen, but definitely Knuto changed a lot. Externally speaking, he changed quite a lot. I don't know internally speaking if he did, because there are some things that he can't forget. But in this episode, it seems as if he completely forgot about Ragnar. There's no way that he's even remembering him. He is remembering Acelado, who is cutting his father's head. He is remembering what Thorkel said to him. But there's no way that he is remembering even one specific scene of Ragnar. And this is pretty sad, because Ragnar was the only one, let me tell you honestly, who cared about Knuto, except for his religious beliefs, but he really wanted to protect him and to let him stay away from the war context. And we see that even Ragnar's death was done in vain, let's say, because Askeladd killed him because he wanted Knuto to do certain things, even if Askeladd then didn't survive. But Askeladd's plan was pretty clear at the end of season 1, and Ragnar was just an obstacle for his plan. But I really wanted him to remember Ragnar because the environment that is depicted around Knuto is not something good. It's not something healthy, and it's not something that can save his soul. And in fact, when I noticed his behavior in this episode, when he's stepping on money, when he's demanding his authority, when he's looking at people in that way, as if he lost his kindness, he lost all of these positive vibes that he had before, and he automatically turned into a slave of power. I mean, he's adapting himself to the context that he's living in. Do you understand what I mean? That's why he changed. And he became someone that I can merely recognize. I didn't like when he was stepping on money and he was saying, oh no, that's not enough. At that moment I thought, oh no, he definitely became like his dad. That means that he wants to aim at the crown, he wants to sit on that throne, he wants to have more power than before. And I think Knuto now understands what his father was saying when he was saying, when I put the crown on my head, I become something else. I am a slave of power. I am tempted to obtain more because that's what the crown wants me to do. And actually, the crown took him to that level until, of course, he became the King of England. His facial expression is definitely different. I mean, you can't see his soul anymore. You just see the typical face of a king. I mean, he became the same thing his father was. There's no identity, there's no personality. He is underwater. Yeah, as a paradox. He is living the same circumstances as Thorfinn was living in the previous episodes. It's like as if his identity is completely lost, he's gone. So there has to be something happening that is awakening him. I really hope so. Because as soon as he was sitting on the throne, you could see that Knuto is completely gone. And it's quite sad. Why do people need to reach that goal and not feel satisfied? Because I don't think Knuto is satisfied. There's no satisfaction from what he did so far, because he was threatening, he was provoking, he was showing his authority, everyone was afraid of him, so he couldn't create any sort of a relationship that was equal. Everything was vertical. That means he was on top and all the others were subordinates under him, and nobody had to say no to his requests. So nobody is telling him, look what you have become. So I really hope that Thorfinn, after he woke up from his, let's say, sleepy status, he can let him think more. Because I understand from Knuto's eyes that he is not satisfied at all. That's just the role he had to interpret in this acting. I think Knuto is acting because around him there's no one who is understand him completely, and when he's by himself he is somewhere else. I mean, I don't think that this role fits him. He is imposing himself to do this role, but that's not what he really wanted to be in his life. I really liked that Mappa chose to show us, Knuto from his back and not frontal. in multiple cases they did that, and I think that that's a nice strategy, because when someone shows his or her back, you can't see the face, you can't see if what you really see is the real portrait, is what you really believe. And in fact, when he's showing his face, you see how sad that person became. And on the other hand, you understand how influenced he was from the context. So I don't want to demonize Knuto 100%. I don't want to condemn him 100%, because I can understand that most of the times the context can influence you at a point in which you can't think anymore. You can't think independently anymore, because you are always suggested here, suggested there, and you think you're doing the right thing. You think that you should fulfill what your role is. You think that this role was given to you, so you have to repay the expectations that were given to you. Knuto is in a hard position, but at the same time, he's obtaining what he wants. And most of the times he's obtaining what he wants with words. I think even the scene of the signals, yeah, from a perspective, it can seem as if he's really brutal, because he has these reinforcements ready to attack these men in the village, the city where this man is living. But is this true? I mean, was that just a way to provoke him, and those signals were there just on purpose to let him be afraid of the consequences? Or actually Knuto wanted to attack him no matter what? I mean, is he using violence for real, or is he faking using violence, and everything is covered by this way to obtain what he wants thanks to words? Because we know that Knuto has never been violent. He always preferred to convince others thanks to his ability of speaking. And that's what he did even now. I mean, he threatened this man, so this man was forced by seeing those signals at a distance to do what he wanted. But this man didn't actually see these reinforcements, coming. He only saw the signals. So those signals were just already a turning point in his life to understand that Knuto was fearful, and he didn't have to obstacle his choices and whatever. What if those signals were just there and someone lighted them up without having any sort of reinforcements? Because I think if I put myself in these men's position, if I see these signals, it makes me understand that, I don't know, 2,000, 5,000 of men, they are behind the hill, coming, approaching me. So I have no choice. But what if there was nobody? And it was just a way to convince the man to do what he was expected to do. That means to poison the king, and to poison even the son of the king. At the end of the day, I think that I wanted to condemn Knuto too. I mean, I don't think it's a saint at all. He was commanding others to poison the king, and he did it because he wanted to conquer England. But I also want to say, he wanted to conquer England for what purpose? I mean, what's the next step? Because that's the most important thing. He says that if that man poisoned the king at that time, and he could have become the king of England, Mercia was left to that man, and they could all live in peace. Are we sure about this? Because after the Danes and English people kept fighting for years and years and years. Is this true? I mean, is it true that we are going to have a peaceful period of time thanks to Knuto? We have to understand this. And probably Thorkel is against Knuto also because of this, because we know that Thorkel always wants to fight, always wants to kill people, promotes violence more than peace, right? While Knuto underlined to this man that if he was going to poison the king, they were going to receive peace on the con. Let's see. I'm curious to see what's his next step, because that makes me understand even more how he became. I can't judge Knut from this episode only. The only thing that I can say is that he condemned himself to this reality, to this role. He put himself inside this cage as much as Thorfinn put himself inside the cage of revenge in season 1. Now Knut put himself into this cage of power that he didn't even really wanted to obtain. But let's say that he was forced to obtain this role to grant peace. Another thing that I wanted to say about Knut related to these peace thoughts is when he was saying that he was not promoting violence when the Danes were conquering some villages. In fact, we saw that he he was against violence on women, on all the people who were being conquered by them. So even from this point of view, you see that he is rebelling against this way of doing from the point of these soldiers, and he's even saying, give me their heads because they didn't follow what I told them to do. That's why I'm saying, yeah, I don't want to judge the book from the cover. I prefer to wait and see what he really wants to do next, because that's the most interesting thing. And also I want to see when he will meet Thorfinn what they are going to say to each other. And yeah, I hope that Knut will surprise me somehow. Yeah, I really believe that he is still thinking, okay, after I became the king, now I can promote peace. I don't want wars anymore. If that's the case, I really appreciate Knut. If he is going to be influenced and he is going to promote violence in the future, or he is surrounded by people who are going to encourage him to fight instead, then I think that I will not appreciate that, and I will understand that he became the victim of his own role. So let's see what's going to happen. But anyway, even Askeladd, he wanted a peace somehow, because he wanted Knut to regain, to become the king, because he saw in Knut a difference. So I really hope that now he's going to show us this difference. Otherwise, even what Askeladd did was done in vain. Let's see what's going to happen. I'm really happy to follow this story because it's pretty emotional and it's intense. And once again, I wanted to say that Mappa, but even, the mangaka, decided to make us understand what's in his mind. We are digging deep inside these characters, and this second season is worth watching. You should watch it, because we can't understand the characters without the environment, without understanding where they are put in, and we can't understand the evolution of these characters without understanding what they think. So I think that the choice that this mangaka had for this second part is so essential, and we should remind us that this is the story, because the story actually starts from season 2. Yeah, if I have to analyze that scene in which Knut is stepping on money, because that man is offering him power, is offering him a treasure, is offering him money, but this way of stepping on money by saying, oh, yasui, I mean, that means, oh, that's really cheap. Yeah, when he turned in that way, I was like, I don't like that smile on his face. But now I can imagine that he did that smile on purpose, and he was saying that that amount of money was pretty cheap. Not because it was cheap for real, but because he wanted to act as if he thought it was cheap, you know? Does that make me understand that he doesn't want to get involved with money? If that's the case, I appreciate Knuto. I really have a faith on him. Let's hope that I don't make any mistake about that. And I was also thinking, in order to reach peace, we have to kill other people. In order to reach a specific goal, you have to sacrifice something. I mean, look at Knuto's life. He could become a king because his father was killed, because that family in episode 14 was killed, brutally killed. All the other warriors that were killed in order to protect him so far. All the wars that were made in order for him to become a king. Except for the fact that he poisoned, that man poisoned both kings. But what I'm saying is, are we really peaceful inside our heart by knowing that we reach a certain goal by sacrificing the lives of others? When Knuto sat on the throne at the end of the episode, he had on his shoulders all the people who died so that he could become the king of England. That's why at the end of the reaction I was saying, are you satisfied with that, Knuto? Because if you had a Christian life before becoming what you became, if you could go back in time to that young boy, and that young boy could look at what you have done in order to become the king. If you really could go back in time and talk to that boy, what would that boy say to you now? I don't think that he would have agreed, right? What you have done, but this makes you understand that even in reality, peace is just a mere goal, because it's so difficult to reach it. We have that goal of find peace, but in order to reach peace, you see that you have to overcome lots of wars, lots of people dying, lots of sacrifices. Is that worth it? I mean, do you really feel peaceful inside of your heart by knowing that all the people that were living were killed because of that purpose? This makes me think a lot, to tell you honestly, because how can peace be peaceful by knowing all this? And that's more or less the same thing that I was thinking when we talk about the role of God for those who believe, because how can God accept this? That in order to reach peace, you needed to slaughter so many people before. That's why I think that probably even Knuto is pretty confused, and probably he is questioning all these kind of things. I really believe that when he sat on the throne, that throne is really heavy. I mean, that throne itself is heavy and makes you feel heavy. And I also want to say that Knuto's position is pretty hard to handle. I mean, it's hard to be a king at the end of the day. You have to decide everything, and you have to try to make the best decisions, even if sometimes those decisions require death. And you can't be sad, you can't feel any sort of pain, you just do it. Because you are thinking with eyes that are wide open, that your mind is widely open. He also said that. I mean, Knuto in the episode said, think bigger. Think on a bigger perspective, not just focusing on that thing. So if the purpose is that, you can also accept what you're doing, because you have to think bigger, you have to open your mind and not focus on one thing only. But does that mean that you don't care, or you just don't want to pay attention on it because you know how brutal or how bad that is? We should think about that too. I think that Knuto's character is not simple at all to be analyzed or to be discussed in a few minutes. But I'm trying my best because I'm always thinking different kind of things. Because I want to see these character in different ways. I don't think that Knuto, as much as all the characters in Vinland Saga, they have just one and only way of being described. As for all of us, we can't be described in one word or in 10 words. It's too easy. We are more complex than what we think. It will take time to understand this character, but it's quite amazing. I think that it's well described. I think that the characterization of all the characters of Vinland are very well described, very well analyzed, and very well portrayed. Okay, see you next time, guys. Thank you so much for the support, and bye. See you.